Hey everyone! Today I'm going to be showing you how to make faux neon signs. This is a super fun way to add some interesting and quirky decorations to your room. I'm going to be showing you how to make an easier version where you're just using one color and you don't really have to do much to it. And then I'm going to be showing you another version where you use multiple colors, and I'm going to go into how to solder the colors together and all that good stuff. So it's going to be a little bit more advanced for that one, but hopefully I'll be able to teach you guys how to do it. So let's get started. You'll need EL wire. I got a pack of 6 colors, each already attached to its own battery pack. I'll leave an affiliate link to the ones that I got in the description box below. A wood box thing. Really, you just want a flat surface that has a back that's deep enough to hide the wire's power pack inside. I got this pre-made one from my local craft store. I also slapped together a piece of wood with some scrap wood for the advanced sign that I'm going to show you. It's not finished and pretty like this box here, but it does the job. Black paint, super glue, a pencil, heat shrink tubing, black electrical tape, a drill with a bit that's a little bigger than the wire, a hot glue gun, wire cutters, a heat gun, and if you're going to do the advanced version, you'll need solder, copper tape, wire strippers, a utility knife, a soldering iron, and a third arm. First things first, paint the wood. I used some black spray paint with a satin finish. Draw your design. You'll want to drill a hole at each end of the design, so mark those with a dot. Just to make sure I have enough wire, I like to roughly go over the design with the wire like so. As you can see, I had plenty. In fact, I had so much that I decided to cut the extra off. I added an extra inch just in case, and then I cut it. Add a dab of hot glue to each end to seal the wire. Apparently, humidity can ruin these wires, so you want to make sure to seal them up really well. You're actually probably fine to leave the wire that you're about to work with open for now, but I was being overly cautious, and anytime I had wire that would be unsealed for more than a few minutes, I would seal up. Better to be safe than sorry. If you have heat shrink wrap, you could use that and add a dot of hot glue in the end to seal the hole. This was my initial plan, but the wrap that I got was just too big, so it wouldn't work around just one wire. Thankfully, just hot glue works too. Drill the holes. From the back, thread your wire through. It really doesn't matter which end you start at. You can see that I started at the end. Now all you have to do is follow your design, adding a bit of super glue wherever you feel like it needs to be anchored down. To get the sharp points in certain letters, like the Z here, you can bend the wire and position it so it's coming up and away from the wood like this. That little bit will just be floating there above the wood, but it should stay in place as long as you anchor the wire around it. EL wire is pretty bendable, but you want to make sure not to bend it too much because you could accidentally break the wires. One thing I did to test how much I could bend the wire is I took one of the colors that I had plenty of extra, and at the very end I bent the crap out of the wire while it was on to see how far I could take it. I bent it as much as I thought I was going to for these signs, and it didn't break, so that was pretty nice. If it does break, you should be able to just snip off that part of the wire and seal it up. And then you know not to bend the wire that you're using for the sign that much. Anyway, back to the sign. Just keep following along your design. If you want to add breaks in the wire, like say the words are in print rather than cursive, you can use heat shrink tubing or electrical tape to black those parts out. I suggest looking at real neon signs to see where they end up putting those blacked out parts to help you figure out where you want to put them on yours. This particular design that I'm doing doesn't call for that, but the next one does, so you'll get to see an example of that soon. Anywho, once you reach the end, thread it back through the hole and then add a bit of glue to the hole to secure the wire in place. You can see here how much extra wire I have. I ended up cutting that wire down so I can use it to lengthen the white wire for the next design, and then I blacked out the rest, just so the back wouldn't glow whenever the sign was on. Use a little bit of hot glue to attach the battery pack to the back, making sure you can still open the battery compartment. These packs actually had a little clip so that you can clip them to your clothes if you use it for a wearable item, but I ended up taking that off, which I will show you how to do in the advanced version. It's really easy, it's just a matter of unscrewing a screw. And here's how it turned out. Now for the more advanced techniques. So, this is kind of a weird design, but I just had to do it. Oh my gulay is something that my godmother would say. It's just a silly expression. Gulay means vegetable in Tagalog. I don't think this is like a normal Filipino saying. I think she would just say it because it sounded funny and it always cracked me up. So yeah. I also added a little eggplant around the words. So anyway, enough about this weird design. It's time to get started. My plan was to solder the colors for the eggplant together so they shared a battery pack, but then let the lettering have its own battery pack so I could have them running on different light settings, like with the lettering blinking but the eggplant always on. Just like the last design, I roughly went over each part of the design with the colors that I wanted to use. I was kind of winging it on this one, so you can see I haven't added any dots where I was going to drill the holes yet. This kind of working style works well for me, sort of. But if you need it to be more planned out, feel free to figure out all of the spots where you need to drill first. I decided that I wanted to keep the battery pack for the green and then solder purple onto that. So I started laying out the green design from the battery pack end. Yes, that is green EL wire. Then I laid out the design with the very end of the purple EL wire. Yes, that's purple EL wire. Trust me. Once I knew about how much I needed for each part, I added about 2 more inches and then cut the wires. Here you can see me trying to work out where I needed to drill the holes. I'm going to black out certain parts of the wire to make O and my look like print and make Gulay look like a more traditional cursive neon, but I didn't want to leave a big piece of blacked out wire going from word to word, so I added holes to the beginning and end of each word so I could hide that part of the wire by threading it around the back. Drill the holes. Now for the fun part, soldering the EL wire. EL wire is essentially made from 5 components: the outer casing, the inner casing, 2 small wires, and then a phosphorus-coated inner wire. The trick with stripping the wire is that you need to remove the outer and inner casing without accidentally cutting off any of the 2 wires that are wrapped around the inner wire. Easy, right? Your wire stripper should have sections where you can just cut the casing and then when you pull it, it should come off, leaving the wires intact. But if you're unlucky like me, the smallest setting on the strippers were only big enough to cut the outer casing. If you're careful enough, you can use the bit of the wire stripper that just straight up cuts the wire, gently close it onto the wire and work your way around, trying to only cut the inner casing, and then pull it off. And if you're good at it, then the small wires will still be intact. And if you're not good at it, like me, then you just ripped those wires out and you need to start over. What I ended up doing, and what worked for me, is after I got the outer casing off, I used a utility knife and carefully cut the inner casing on both sides and then peeled it like a banana. Once you have those wires exposed, bend the 2 small wires down and use your utility knife to scrape the phosphorus off of the inner wire to expose the bare wire. Repeat on the other piece of EL wire. Hold the 2 ends together like this and lift up the small wires. Wrap the copper tape around like this. Now, there's copper tape that is made for electronics, and I thought that this was one and the same, but I was wrong. The stuff I used was still conductive and worked for what I needed, but it was way thicker than the stuff that I saw other people using, and it didn't really stick that well, and it started coming up a little on the edges. Like I said, it still worked out in the end, but if you want to use copper tape, make sure you go out and buy the kind that's made for electronics. Pull all of the small wires down over the copper and hold it with your third arm. Twist the two inner wires together. Now solder the small wires together, being careful not to keep the soldering iron pushed down onto the tape too long so it doesn't melt the casings. When that's cooled, wrap the tape over that join and cut the extra copper tape off. If you don't have or you don't want to use copper tape, you can just twist these small wires together and solder them. The tape, in theory, is just nice because it ensures a good connection and it keeps everything together. Stick the wires back into the third arm and solder the inner wires together. Cut off a piece of heat shrink tube that's big enough to cover all of the connections. Slide it over and shrink it down. You can use the shaft of your soldering iron to heat this stuff if you don't feel like whipping out your heat gun again, but just be careful not to linger in one spot because you could melt it. Add a dab of hot glue to the end to seal it up. And now for the big test. It works! And see, the wires are purple and green. After the high of being successful at soldering these wires together wore off, I realized I made my life a little bit harder in terms of wiring it through the wood. Since I had this gigantic spot where these two wires are connected, I needed to make the holes for the top of the eggplant big enough to accommodate that. If I planned a little better, then I would have known to just thread everything through and then solder them together from behind the sign. Anyway, I ended up making these two holes slightly bigger, and then I just completely threaded everything through. And then I started blacking out the wire and gluing down the design. You might have noticed that I barely had enough purple to make my design. That's from all the times that I messed up stripping the wires and I had to keep cutting it back. Anyway, lay the wires down onto the design and follow as closely as you can. Mark the spots that you want to black out. Cover those areas with electrical tape, or if you haven't completely threaded everything through, like I did, then you can slide heat shrink wrap pieces that are cut to size and shrink them in place. Once you have all those spots covered, you can start gluing the wire down, making sure not to cover any of the other holes. This is the part that I forgot to film earlier. These packs have this little clip that you can use if you made something wearable. You could just clip it into your pocket or whatever, but since I mounted these onto the back of wood, I wanted to take the clip off. Luckily, they're just screwed on, so you can unscrew that screw, making sure to hold the pack together tightly, remove the clip, and then screw it closed again. Then basically you're going to just keep doing what you've been doing to finish out the design. For the lettering, I just had a few references pulled up so I could figure out where I wanted to black out the wire.
Circuit screen, and all magazines told the story of me. I was divine, I was the sun, and I told myself it was real. I knew you were watching, how could I be myself?
Touch up any spots that needed to be blacked out, and then you're done. I love how these turned out. The only thing that I would want to change is the size of the EL wire. You can get thicker wire so it really would look like a neon sign, but I ended up ordering these thinner wires because, well, I'm not really sure, but I'm still pretty happy with how they turned out.
Up the eyes on the lives of my friends. The wind and the tide were at my command. I told them to wait for me, wait for me. I knew you were watching, how could I be myself?
I hope you all enjoyed this project. If you did, please leave a like, and if you want to see more, then feel free to subscribe. I post art videos every Tuesday and DIY videos every Thursday. You can follow me on Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, or Pinterest, and I'll leave the information to those down below. If you have any questions or suggestions for future videos, please leave a comment down below, and I'll see you next week.